Welcome back to another episode of The Review, hosted here on the Alaska Landmine. I'm your host, Cale Green, and today we're going to be talking about the apparent movement in Alaska and the United States at large away from social media giants like Facebook and Twitter to more conservative platforms like Parler and WeMe. If you haven't heard of Parler, get ready to have your bubble popped as we get down to what's happening around us in today's episode. Welcome to The Review. So if you haven't heard of Parler, don't worry, I hadn't either until late last week when my state senator Laura Reinbold posted up this on Facebook, inviting people to go follow her on the app. I'd never heard of it, but I'm constantly trying to keep up with where our collective attention and subsequently consciousness is. I immediately went to the App Store to go look for it and found that it was number one in the App Store, number one in social media platforms, and number one for news. There was clearly a waking giant that I'd totally missed. Curiosity got the best of me. I immediately downloaded the app and made an account. And before I get into what the experience was like, I wanted to first share what the hottest social media app is. Quick note about the pronunciation of the name, which had been the debate of some of the Landmine team. While people in America seem to be all calling this Parler or Parler, the correct and initial pronunciation, how the app developers intended for it to be, was Parler, very much like the French term. So I just wanted to clarify and let you guys know as you continue that while I will continue to call it what everyone will colloquially, that the initial intention was to parlay. Parler is a social media app that feels more like Twitter than it does Facebook. If you get to the company's website, you can see right away how they're set to define their niche in the social media landscape. The world's first town square. Speak freely, express yourself openly, without fear of being deplatformed for your views. Engage with real people, not bots. Parler is people and privacy focused and gives you the tools you need to curate your Parler experience. After going over some of the terms and conditions of the app, it's clear that the app developers have, or at least purport to have, a more laissez-faire attitude when it comes to what is said on the app. Basically, you say whatever you want as long as it's not violating somebody else's rights or violating any laws regarding unprotected free speech. Although, at least in one way, they're more restrictive than apps like Twitter, because Parler doesn't allow pornography. Yeah, in case you missed that, because it was news to me too, apparently, as long as it's between two consenting adults and it's marked as adult content, you can have porn on Twitter. What a power move by Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey. Porn is allowed. No political advertising, though. Although outside of that, there are some major similarities between the platform. If you know Twitter, it won't take you long to get Parler. Tweets are called parleys, and responses and retweets echoes. Unlike Twitter's algorithm-based feed, Parler's is chronological, similar to what Instagram and Twitter used to be. The company was founded in 2018 by CEO John Matz and Jared Thompson. The 2014 graduates from University of Denver said, after being exhausted with a lack of transparency in tech, ideological suppression, and privacy abuse, based in Henderson, Nevada, or basically Vegas, the privately owned company has grown its user base dramatically over the last 2 years, experiencing surges every time censorship occurs from either Twitter or Facebook. One of its more frequently discussed users is Laura Loomer, who was banned from Twitter in 2018 for violating the site rules regarding hateful conduct when she tweeted the Democratic Minnesota representative Ilhan Omar, one of the first Muslim women in Congress, was anti-Jewish and pro-Sharia. Laura Loomer left Twitter with a little more than 260,000 followers in 2018 and now has 687,000 as of when I checked earlier today on Parler. Her tagline on the app, investigative journalist, Jewess, most banned woman in the world. Sorry, let me just read that right. It's all okay. Most banned woman in the world. You know, if I'm being honest, I didn't even know Jewess was a term that people use, but hey, I must just be sheltered from Alaska. Other notable folks on the site are Alex Jones, President Trump, Senator Cruz, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, and apparently the crowned Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Honestly, I don't have time to get into that, but look it up. It's wild. But apparently in December of 2019, Twitter banned some 88,000 accounts with ties to disinformation campaigns backed by the Saudi Arabian government. I digress. Outside of that outlier, the app is largely conservative, promoted by conservatives, and has come under some fire for allowing too much free speech, including some supposed anti-Semitic remarks, which I've seen pushback online for, but if you allow for all speech, part of all speech could sometimes be anti-Semitic. So I don't doubt the claim that it exists, just like it did on Twitter or Facebook until starting around maybe 4 years ago when they changed up their policy. But what's interesting to me is the massive signups I've seen here locally. I want to highlight a post I had seen from the Matsu crime group that I follow, where the admins had been given a message by Facebook that there would be increased restrictions placed on the page due to what they believed was a high number of folks in the group violating the rules of conduct. Now, an admin or a moderator must approve every post for the group. I'm a big believer that everything always has an equal and opposite reaction. In the case of moderating a group or constantly blocking or censoring content, the reaction was going to be looking for a place that didn't do those things. And I think that's what's so fascinating about this, is how the two different sides rightly see this issue. On the one hand, there's a lot of fake news that's flying around right now in regard to the election. On the other, there's also a lot of censoring that's happening from Facebook and Twitter, both news and people's thoughts. Both things can be true without invalidating the other. The quantifiable reaction to the debate being had between free speech and fake news, there is no clear winner here. Facebook and Twitter are actually in a no-win situation. They received an incredible amount of condemnation after the 2016 election, and it hasn't let up since then. Only the voices have changed along the way. If they do nothing and allow falsehoods to spread unchecked, they will be regulated by the government. Big Brother will step in for them. If they censor people and try to slow down the spread of falsehood, they try to make themselves the thought police of America, and they're going to lose that battle and subsequently people and advertising dollars. It may just be that a large number of conservatives get on the platform and never leave Facebook or Twitter. It just becomes another button to check on your phone, to add to the mindless cycling and scrolling that many of us are so occasionally plagued by. Or people do leave. And now, because of disagreements of what can be said, we'll polarize and turn partisan, even our social media feeds, creating a larger divide between those in Camp A and Camp B. Really, to boil this episode down into one question is this a mass exodus? Is this indicative of a larger trend that will be happening in Alaska and around the country? For conservative candidates, is this somewhere where you should move immediately to start capitalizing on the audience of people who are migrating over now? Is this the beginning of a trend, or the conservative equivalent to I'm going to move to Canada if this candidate wins? Only time will tell. Thanks for joining us on another episode of The Review. Hope this has been fun, and at least you've learned a little bit more about an app that maybe you had no idea about. I know I had a really good time researching it. Thanks so much, and see you next time.